Cool. Hey, thank you very much, Sam. That is 7 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Kia ora koutou, ko Douglas Walker, toko ingoa, ko hato patariki te poniki, te kora. On behalf of NZASE, it's my great pleasure to introduce 3 science educators and leaders who are trialling the 4 new Nature of Science standards this year. We've got Chandar Dewan from Tangaroa College. Also from Auckland, we have Linda Haycock of Green Bay High School. And I'd just like to acknowledge how tough you and the rest of Auckland have it at the moment. Thank you for the hard mahi you guys are doing on behalf of all of us. Joining us from Tauranga is Kamal Nair of Te Puke High School. And you can find more information about our panelists' very varied kura in the description at the bottom. I'd also like to welcome Samantha York of James Hargis College. Sam's our immediate past president and publications manager. Sam's going to be checking for questions in the chat and we'll direct them after our main discussion. And just before we begin, I will say that any views expressed are those of the individual and don't represent any other organization. Without further ado, in no particular order, Linda, Chandar, and Kamal, so feel free to chip in as you see fit. If we cast time back about a year to this sort of time last year, you're in the sort of tentative stages of making plans for your new level 1 science courses. Could you talk us through what steps you took?
Now we're going to wait until see who goes first. Chandar.
Okay, so we start pretty close to an existing year 11 program, an existing NCEA program. A chem unit, a phys unit, and a bio unit. We linked each of the content units with a socio-scientific issue. That was in preparation for the 1.2 standard. We sort of wanted a couple of hits at the aspects of that standard before the kids actually went in and wrote that standard. So yeah, each standard was roughly a term. The physics standard was very loosely based on the existing mechanics. The chemistry standard was very loosely based on the carbon chemistry standard in the chemistry strand, and the biology one was based on mammals as consumers from the biology strand, although we sort of tweaked it and focused more as humans as consumers. And then we looked for opportunities to do the investigations. We decided to do just 3 of the different types of investigations. Other schools did the whole cohort. We decided to do 3 and then focus on 3. And then also looking for opportunities to embed in the 1.3 and opportunities for 1.4 in those big chunks of learning. The big challenge for us really as teachers and also as students was the fact that each term we were working on multiple standards. It wasn't the good old way of teach acids and bases, do the formative testing, over and done with, move on to genetics. We were sort of fiddling with doing chemistry at the same time, doing some teaching towards 1.3, looking at elements of socio-scientific. So that was sort of the challenge. I think I might stop now.
Wonderful, thank you, Chandar.
Yeah, I'll go next. Sorry, Linda.
That's a good.
We find out about that we are in terms of the pilot program sort of later in term 3. And then we started looking at what we're going to do. So we went to, I was asked to go to Wellington, and we looked at a couple of, 3 sample units that ministry had put out. And then as a team, we looked at those 3 sort of units, and then we looked at what will suit our kids here in the local context in Bay of Plenty. And then we decided to sort of handpick a few things from what ministry had put out, and we named it Wahinoho as a place where we live, where we are, and where we belong. And then we, keeping in mind that these kids were going into mainstream chemistry, biophysics the following year, so we sort of chucked in chemistry, biophysics, and like Chandar was saying, we looked at sort of embedding all those 4 standards throughout the year as well. And then, yeah, so that's where we kind of looked at what ministry have put out, and then we looked at what will suit us, what will suit our kids in terms of local context, and then that's how we designed our sort of unit for the year. And we looked at chemistry in term 1, we're looking at water, and then we looked at land and energy in term 3, going into term 4.
So we took a somewhat different approach. We threw the baby out with the bath water, and we started by looking at the big ideas that we were given a bit before, when we knew we were going to be a pilot school but hadn't had the meeting with the ministry. So we unpacked the big ideas and had a big discussion through that and unpacked the standards. I'm from quite a big team, so we do a lot of collaborative discussion and unpacking so that we're all on the same page. Takes us a bit longer to do things because of that. So yeah, we unpacked what was expected of us. We looked at what we thought the level 2 students would actually be better knowing, not even thinking about what the current or the existing NCEA courses were. What do we want the level 2s to know? What do the students come into year 11 with? And then we looked at our local area, what sort of things, topics and contexts were relevant to our kids. And then, yeah, we put the course together. So it's quite different. It has aspects of existing mechanics, acid bases, and genetics, but it also has a lot of other stuff in it that you wouldn't normally teach at year 11, but what we're hoping is that our kids have a good, broad, solid foundation to go into level 2 with, rather than a lot of knowledge about one thing and not a lot about anything else. So that's the approach we took.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. Lots of different approaches there. You talked a little bit about sort of meetings in Wellington and things. What kind of support have you had for each other, or from any other group to help you along the way?
We get together pretty regularly. We get together with MOE, and Pro puts on a monthly, is it? I think it's monthly meeting. And in that meeting, we've got Andrea from Science Learning Hub, who has been fantastic at helping us with resources and yeah, all that background stuff. We've had several ministry people there. I'm not entirely sure what they all do, but they're there. And then there's also several NZQA people there. And that's been pretty awesome too, is to have those guys there. They've sort of got two, we've learned a lot about how NZQA works. They've got sort of like the external side and the internal side, and yeah. So it's been really good to have contact with all of them.
Yeah, I feel those Zoom meetings have been useful, but I think amongst ourselves, 6 schools been sharing ideas and helping each other out, and Linda yourself have been sharing lots of resources with us, which is awesome, and other schools, not just resources but students' work, like Chandar just sent one today just to see if it is achieved merit excellence, and it gives us an indication of what everybody's on, like, because at the moment what assessments look like, what marking criteria look like, we kind of finding our feet ourselves. So I guess, I think the biggest help for me personally in our team would be from the 6 schools and teachers from 6 schools sharing each other with resources and assessments, and etc.
I've been a little bit disappointed with the amount of support that we have received. The way that the 6 schools have worked together has been amazing. And then again, kudos to Linda and her team. They've been very, very forthcoming with sharing resources. And really, that's the role I was expecting from other places, which we didn't really get. And also Science Learning Hub's support has been fantastic. I was expecting resourcing, I was expecting PLD, and I was expecting support in understanding the standard. That's been a real tricky thing with some of those standards. And the 6 of us, or the 6 schools, have had wonderful meetings where we've tried to nut out and work out what the intention is, without input from other sources, the people who wrote it, for one thing. Mike Stone has come on board. Many people would know Mike recently, but again, that was more on an insistence from us to get people like Mike Stone on board. So that has probably been the low point for me as far as the piloting.
Thank you for that, Chandar. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And talking about the lows there, what have the highs and lows been for each of your kura as you've gone through this?
Highs for us is that we're working as a team, and using each other's strengths in terms of developing resources. Coming up, because it's fairly new a course that we're running. So I guess it's the teamwork, I'd say. It's really, we meeting regularly, basically every week, or basically, yeah, every week, to go through what we're doing, because we're going week by week basis of how things are going. Some are going, some classes are firing away. There are some that are struggling. So we kind of, supporting each other as a team. So I think that is a positive. The other one for us would be the external exam that we did, 1.3, middle of the year. The participation, everybody, we got 180 students part of this trial program, and out of the 180, 144 actually took part in this exam. They set this exam, and that's a biggie, because normally these kids, half of them probably wouldn't even turn up or not do the externals. So that was positive, and the vibe we got from that, students coming out of that exam, positive vibe. Mr. We did well. I think I did well, and we actually can do externals. And results here, there were a few surprises as well, and amazed us that these kids can actually do the externals. And so those are a couple of highs for us here at Tupuke.
Thank you, Kamal.
Interesting. I would say the same. The response from the students have been really, really, they responded very, very well to the learning. We noticed that right throughout the year, and I think part of it was the fact that the learning was much more contextualized than it had been in previous NCEA teachings. One of my big stories is parent evening, and the parents are telling me how the young kids came home and was talking at the dinner table. We did digestive system and looked at diabetes. Diabetes is a big issue in our community with numbers and things. And he was telling his grandparents about what he'd learned, and there was this conversation, and the parents were sharing that kind of stuff with us. And that was really, really positive. The fact that kids are taking learning home is not something that happens in our community. We also had a massive turnout for the external, 90%, which the only thing I could compare it with really was the maths cats. And yeah, ours exceeded far higher than the maths department's cats. And the achievement was really, really good. And 1.3, I was really, really nervous about 1.3, simply because it was going to be in a context that our kids are not familiar with. Normally when kids sort of see context that's different. You know, they'll come to you and say, hey, you didn't teach us about this, and it was in my exam. But I think the approach to teaching the 1.3, where we really made it quite explicit that these are the aspects we're looking at rather than the content that it's based on, and that I think worked really well. I think we talked about this earlier. Working with the other 6 schools is another big positive for me. We don't get that opportunity to work with such different schools around New Zealand. And the ideas that have come up, you know, finding out what somebody in Southland is doing or out the West Coast has been really fantastic. So those are my pluses.
Mine are pretty similar, actually. I mean, student engagement has been awesome. Even our more interesting students have really been, we're not so tied by having to do acids and bases mechanics and genetics. It's a lot freer. We can make it about things that they're interested in, and we can twist it and turn it a bit. And the fact that they're actually really getting into it. The validity of science information one's been pretty cool to work with too, because we there's that flat Earth video where they try to use science to prove that the Earth is flat, and we showed the kids that one, and oh my gosh, the response, they were getting so angry with them because they weren't using the science properly, they weren't using the results properly, and it was just they could recognize why things were so bad because they could see where the science was wrong. And that's pretty cool, especially when you're coming into something like COVID, which, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there for that, and there's a lot of wrong stuff out there for that. And yeah, the kids are learning how to work it out, that, you know, what's good and what's not. So that's been pretty cool. And working with everyone. I mean, you've got South Westland and North Southland, which I'm really struggling with still. and the issues that they have compared to what the issues that we have. It's been really interesting. It's been good.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Talking about the context a little bit there, from the recent NZASE survey, there was a lot of, I think it's fair to say, sort of trepidation around the emphasis on Mātauranga Māori. Can you comment on, you know, what you've done in that space, and what you've included and what decisions you've made along the way?
Chandar, your turn first.
Okay. Yep, fair to say we all have found that a challenge, the aspects of Mātauranga Māori. For the 4 standards, we have not looked at a huge amount of Mātauranga Māori in the 4 standards. We've done little bits, little activities, mainly from Science Learning Hub, but I don't really feel that we have really encompassed the intent of Mātauranga Māori. And I know stuff that I'm doing with Beans is going a lot more in depth than what we're doing. Having said that, the one external that we've done, the 1.3, the actual assessment did not have a huge, in fact, it had a very token level, vocab level of Mātauranga Māori, and we all commented on that. You know, there was actually potential of developing it further. So there's a part of me that feels that there's quite a few groups that possibly don't really understand or how to integrate Mātauranga Māori in a meaningful way, which I think is the most important aspect. Yeah.
I agree with Chandar. With the challenges, we have the same. So we're facing the same challenges here. It's this lack of expertise in our department and our school to kind of embed Mātauranga Māori, because for me, personally, I feel like it's not about just vocabularies, you know, you in real in your classroom, but I think it's more to it. So that's our challenge. But going forward, I think we will go out into the community and shoulder tap the local experts to come in either into our classroom, or we take the students out. And sort of, we are looking at local context. We're looking at Makatu around here, Bay of Plenty area, looking at sea, looking at local streams, stream study for next year. So when we're going to do that, we're going to actually get people in, local experts, local community. We're going to involve community into our learning. It will be either coming into classroom, or we going out and making those connections out there. And I think that's probably that's what we are planning to do, and that I think that's probably the first step into sort of embedding Mātauranga into our classroom. We're getting the local experts, local knowledge into our classrooms. And we haven't been, like Chandar said, we haven't been doing much this year in those 4 standards, bits and pieces here and there where we could. And Science Learning Hub, again, is great with the resources. It saves us time going out and looking for, local context, whatever resources. So yeah, Science Learning Hub this year, but going forward, I think our plan is to go out there in the community and look at what's out there, who can come in, or who we can shoulder tap and use to sort of get that local knowledge into our classrooms.
Just on that note, Kamal, do you have how do you plan on making those connections?
It's through like at the moment we have our Rio teacher in our school, and she knows somebody who works with the ministry and works with the local iwi and has got that science knowledge out in the community. So people like that, we will make these connections. Local kaumatuas, local iwi, whoever's out there who are willing to come, parents, whānau, whoever is willing to come and share their knowledge with us.
Yeah.
In certain aspects, if it's be beach, river, stream, maunga, whatever it is, if they're willing to come and share their knowledge in the classroom. And I think that's where we're going to start making those connections, getting the local experts in.
Awesome, thank you. Linda, do you have anything to add?
We have a bit of a different situation. We have a school that's about 80% European. We come from an area where the local iwi were kicked out so many years ago. They're only just starting to come back in, so they're not in a position to help us out much at the moment. We have an urban marae, 2 suburbs away, that services quite a few schools. So we don't have a lot of contacts. We've had to take a different approach. So we've decided to do it through a way of thinking rather than having local Māori come in to help us out. We don't have that. So contacts are great, and Science Learning Hub has been really good, but we've found it better to do it through the concepts of whakawhanangatanga. Sorry, my pronunciation is dreadful. I'm learning and I'm really bad at the language. Sorry, I apologise.
A lot of us are learning. Don't worry about that, Linda. Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep going though, don't let me stop you.
So we're doing it through the, we're learning it, we're trying to approach it through whakawhanangatanga, kaitiakitanga, and I'm going to say this wrong, Māori, M-A-U-R-I, and the concepts of all being one with the land, and we're trying to take that approach rather than trying to have locals come in, because we just don't have that resource. The kids are fantastic. They know so much more than we, the teachers, do, and we are just so using the kids so much. If we didn't have them, we'd be stuck. So we're kind of doing it very collaboratively with the students.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Can I just give another plug to Science Learning Hub? I really think they've been very proactive in developing Mātauranga resources. They are largely around the environment and ecosystems, which didn't fit in with our year 11 context. And one approach that we are taking is where we actually using those in year 9, and of course, you know, if you think of NCEA as a 3-year process, we're building that understanding from year 9. The big glitch on that, of course, is that was the plan for term 3.
Fair point, very fair point. You've touched on it a little bit, but could you comment on the engagement of the students with the new standards, particularly the wide range of students that you might have?
Campbell?
Yeah, I'll go there. Yeah, so the challenge we face by doing this pilot program when it comes to credits, because in other classes they're in the normal NCEA, they're doing normal NCEA standard, you know, they get credits every 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Where when we're doing this pilot program, our first credits came from that external. That was in June, and the results came out in third week of August, sometime like that. So that was their first set of credits. So that way, there are like the I'd say our high achievers are flying away. They're enjoying those, you know, those investigations, those 1.1 standards as they go through as part of their learning. 1.3, you know, we kind of looked at. There was one exemplar out from NZQA because we were not sure, you know, how to prepare, what to expect, and the exemplar came out quite late. But nevertheless, I mean, we did our best, and our staff did really well, and we prepared our kids in. And engagements were really good. Even 1.3, I think the understanding came at the end once we looked at the exemplar. Okay, this is what it might look like. And now we're doing the social scientific issue, the 1.2, the second internal. Yes, there are mixed, and just I would say the engagement with our high achievers are great. They understand, even though the literacy demand is quite high with the standards. External, we looked at those readings, I looked at those readings, I was like, you know, how the students would just get put off by it. That looked like a level 3 sort of pictures in writing. It looked like level 3 bio paper, for instance. And so, yes, the literacy demand is high, and our low achievers, we have to take time. And that is something that we will look into next year, is how we deliver this program again, especially with 1.1 throughout, spread out throughout the year. And with 1.2, I'm looking at half of my year 11 cohort will smash through it, finish it off, you know, by end of this term. But there are a group of students that will take a lot of time. They will take longer because we have to scaffold, break it down. They're not used to writing essays, you know, researching skills, and those are the things that they are struggling with. So that takes time, and you know, and will take time. We might go into term 4 with a group of students, but overall, I think the students, engagement-wise, they're enjoying it, and I think it will. When this pilot program becomes the norm, when everybody's doing sort of similar approach with 4 standards throughout the year, you know, spread out, you're getting credits from externals or at the end of the year, whatever. I think it will be all good. And yeah, so I think engagement-wise, there are issues, but I think we are kind of working our way through it, and students kind of getting it that, yeah, it's a year-long program, not just a 4 credit standard term by term basis. Yeah.
Sorry, I got a bit of feedback from myself there.
I'm sorry, my internet connection.
Sorry, do you want to go, Linda?
Yeah, I was just saying my internet connection's a bit dodgy, so things keep freezing on me. I live in the Wild West where things aren't quite normal here. Engagement for us, for our kids, has been really, really high. It's been the highest it's ever been. And we still have those few interesting students, but on the whole, engagement's been great, and we haven't heard, is this worth credits, as much as what we normally do, which has been really good. So.
Yeah, again, I think the students have really taken on board these new standards really, really well. I think that the relevance aspect is one of the things that's worked really, really well for us. The fact that we used socio-scientific issues as a context and the kids could relate to that. The one sort of aspect of mataranga that we did do was we looked at rongoā as a component of mataranga with the year 11s. And students came back the following days. Our students are largely Pacific Island students. And they were coming back and they were talking about aspects of rongoā from their culture. And that to me never happens, you know, kids don't come back and discuss aspects of science that's happening in their lives, which I thought was, as far as engagement goes, that's right up there. So that was one plus. And yeah, we definitely are going to keep, if we're going to continue with the NOS standards, we definitely are going to keep the socio-scientific contextualizing aspect.
Yeah, the context has been great because you're not tied to what content is being examined. You've got freedom to make it interesting and relevant to the kids, and they learn despite themselves, which has been fantastic.
You touched on a little bit there, you know, some of the things that you're thinking about for next year. I think particularly yourself, Chandar. What for all of you, you know, we're nearing the end of your trial year in terms of the time that we've got with the seniors. And then what's your thought processes around how is it going to look different next year? What things would you do differently?
We're going to keep the same course. We're going to make some tweaks, of course. We made a few mistakes. We spent way too long on some of the investigations as we were trying to work out what on earth was going on. Mm-hmm. So we can streamline it a bit. And of course, we've lost the last term. So we'd really like to teach the last term of what we were planning. That was really cool, but yeah, it went.
Yeah, streamlining, refining is definitely one of our issues was we planned too much. There were things that, you know, we wanted to get into and develop and had to cut back because time was running out, kind of thing. A lot of things didn't work. Modeling is still a bugbear for me. We can't do modeling. Yeah, had to jump back to good old fair testing. Thank God for fair testing. But yeah, so yeah, a lot more refining for next year, and still want to look at developing new ways of doing things, but it's basically streamlining.
Absolutely. Expand on that point about the modelling a little bit for us. What do you mean by that? In terms of you can't do it.
Wow.
What's a model? We had big discussions.
We had massive discussions, you know, and eventually I think we did come to a definition amongst the six of us about what modelling was, and in the fact that the model had to generate data. But I spent a good part of term one doing a carbon dioxide greenhouse model with Coke bottles that works on every YouTube clip, but did not work for me. I still have not worked out why the temperature does not increase in a bottle full of carbon dioxide. So, yeah. If somebody out there can help me out with that, because I think it's a really, really cool model, but it just would not work. So eventually I think we just resorted to looking at ocean acidification and good old limestone and acid. Good test. I can't. Yeah. That was the one model that it just would not work for us. So when you start doing something new and like we've never done that experiment before, and you're sort of investing time, energy, effort into developing something, and then it falls down, it's a real pain. But yeah.
Then it's exciting too because you can try these things as well, which we've never been able to do before. We've always been so constrained by what the exam's going to be, but now we can try new things and the kids can try things, and you get off track sometimes, and that's not always good either.
Try
other things as well, I have to say.
Yeah, trial and error for us as well. We plan, like Chandar's saying, plan a lot because we didn't know how it's going to look like, and we had to cover a lot because one mind is on the students are going into level 2 chemistry, biophysics. We have to prepare them, and then looking at this program, how we're going to do it all together. So our team, we were having the talks before as well. We kind of planned a lot, but we need to refine and sort of restructure and looking at how we're going to deliver. But most of the things will keep it same, and probably looking at more contextualizing to our local, merging into our local curriculum, and basically keeping it the same, and that's just refining it.
Awesome, thank you. What are the implications for the level 2 and 3 students now that they've done this new level 1 course?
Well, we're hoping we sorted it out as to what we wanted the kids to know. Like going into level 2 chemistry, normally they don't know anything about covalent bonding, yet we have taught them the amount of energy, because our first unit was, it's all about me, based around the body, and we used respiration and the energy bound up in carbon, hydrogen, oxygen bonding. And so we talked about conservation of matter, we talked about covalent bonding and atomic structure and stuff. And then we are supposed to be doing ionic bonding at the moment, but that's not quite happening as it should have done.
Good question, Doug. We'll find out next year.
We're hoping for a broader, narrower but broader baseline to go in foundations. So a smaller amount, but a wider baseline to go into level 2.
We did take a bit of a risk, I guess maybe you could call it that, with the biology. So we dropped genetics, pretty much entirely, level 1 genetics from our year 11 course. We focused on the digestive system, and there were sort of elements of enzyme action in there. So there's some sort of leading to the year 12 stuff. But we are basically going to start our year 12 genetics courses from scratch. As a biology teacher, I'm not overly impressed with the genetics that kids come in from level 1 into level 2. So the approach is we start fresh. We're not really starting from fresh because they have done a pre-genetics work in year 10. How much of that they retain is your guess as good as mine. So that is like an experiment, and like Kamal said, we will find out next year. But as far as the chemistry, we went along the same pathway as Linda. We looked more at carbon chemistry rather than looking at ionic bonding, and I don't think we did anything on acids and bases. And the physics that we had planned was basically the mechanics unit.
Thank you. Lots to consider there. Just some advice potentially for other schools then, and looking back over your own journey, what advice would you give to other kura as they start to plan new level 1 courses? Might ask you to start with that one, Linda. You've got a particularly large team there that you've managed throughout that as well.
I missed a lot of that, sorry.
I was asking, what advice would you give to other teachers in kura if they're planning new level 1 courses?
I think it's very important to start in with actually unpacking the big ideas, and that's the place to start, actually looking at why you are actually teaching this stuff. It's really important to know that background and understand that skills are important, and you cannot learn content without skills. I've lost you, so I have no idea what's happening.
I'm picking you up loud and clear, Linda. Not sure if you're getting us.
I think she's gonna Well,
we heard. I think we heard a lot of that, Linda. Yeah, that was really good. Thank you.
For us, for my advice would be actually, last year when Linda first told me that she's got her whole department working on the new standards. And I'm like, wow, that's gutsy. Because we've only had 3 teachers. And I thought, yep, 3, that's manageable, the 3 of us working together. But I think I want to take a leaf out of Linda's book and have a bigger pool of people. And the interactions is obviously very, very productive, gauging by the resources and the work that has come out from Green Bay. There's an amazing range of resources. There's out-of-box kind of thinking, which I really, really like. So I would say engage a larger group of people. If you're a small school, work with other schools. One of the big pluses that all 3 of us have said is the interactions between the 6 schools. I think other than Linda, it was the first time I met the other 5 or 4. So yeah, interacting with people who are working on the same thing. We have regular meetings, I think is definitely would be my advice.
Yeah, pretty much Linda and Chandar has covered it. Only thing I would add is basically when you're designing a program, you look at who's in front of you, and we are moving towards the local curriculum. So I guess you look at what's around us and who's in front of us, and then you design a program to suit the kids, and also making those connections with the local community, I guess. And yeah, communication is key, and networking is important. You know, especially when you're starting, and like for my team, we've got an amazing team here at Te Puke, using each other's strength, supporting each other, and creating those resources moving forward. Yeah.
Awesome.
Certainly having a bigger team and a team that works well together is imperative.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm loving hearing about the support that you've had for each other. I'm hoping that other schools will be able to find support, with local clusters of schools, perhaps, as we all embark on that journey. I think it'd probably be a good time to jump over to Sam. Sam, have you got some questions for us from the chat? She's muted, eh?
No, it was worse than that. I'd lost my mouse. Got a heap of questions, folks, and I've got them in themes, so I'll just start. Alison, I haven't got your question, but I'll get there. So Alison's the last question on the chat. But I'll go through support and then into curriculum, and then there's quite a few on assessment, big picture, some organisational questions at the end. So hopefully we'll get there. The team's saying thanks, Ange, for your tātuku as well. But from a question, where do you guys see the support needing to improve before this goes from a trial to mainstream? You did a big sigh then, Chandar. I think you can go for it.
I know in early consultation, PLD was the one thing teachers asked for, and it's still the one thing we need. PLD to make sense of the standards. I learned a lot more about the standards while teaching it. So I think that is absolutely important. And resourcing would be the other one, whether it's for mataranga, whether it's for knowing how to do a model. PLD and resourcing, I know it's 2 things teachers asked for, and it was in short supply this year.
And time.
Thank you.
I agree.
Time.
Yeah, time, that miracle
time.
A few curriculum questions. So quite a few people were focused around that mid-year external, but we'll get to that next. Firstly, you guys, none of you seem to mention earth and space science. Have you tried to integrate earth and space science, or is that kind of just gone by the wayside as a result of the new standards? Where's that stream of the curriculum gone?
We've got, well, actually, we were into earth and space science just as lockdown came on. We were looking at the formation of the Waitakere Ranges before we look at what's here now, and we were going to do a climate model. We were because they always say it rains more out west, and we were volcanoes, earth structure. We were going to do the rocks. Unfortunately, yeah, lockdown.
Okay.
But yeah, it was very much part of what we were doing. We try to be equal weights with all the 4 areas.
For us, ESS really fell away a while ago in year 11. We teach it up to year 10, but it hasn't really been part of our NCEA courses because we've been focusing on the 3. Other than for our lower ability, largely internal courses where we do the earth and space science learning.
Yeah, for us, we haven't had a look at it this year, but so similar to Chandar, we used to do earth and space science standards in level 1 previously, but that's something that it's going forward next year. We'll try to embed it into our program.
And sorry, there is actually opportunity. If you look at 1.3 and also 1.4, there's no fixed content for that. So I think the Alfred Wenger resource has been floating around a lot of places. So we use that one. In fact, I used that one in 1.3, and then we revisited it as part of 1.4 as well. So although we didn't do it as much, there is opportunity. And I mean, if any topic has had science knowledge changing over time, you'd think earth and space science would be the one.
Yeah.
I think you got to realize that with 1.3 and 1.4 not being attached with the content, and we're teaching the skills, you can't teach the skills without the content. So when we're doing all the practice for 1.3 and 1.4, and we're using all these different contexts because we're trying to use a variety, the kids are learning a lot of the content incidentally. And so, it's coming out anyway.
Cool. Question about investigations. What was everyone's experience of the particular standard? I know you talked a little bit more about that after this question came in. So Chandar, you mentioned investigations just doing 3. What was everyone's experience of the particular standard? As you guys, some schools did all 6. So what were your experiences of the investigation standard?
I'll start. Yeah, modeling was an issue for us as well. We had to figure out what modeling actually looks like, what is expected. So I had to have a chat to NZQA. We sent a couple of assessment tasks to NZQA, and then they came back with, okay, this doesn't look like, this is not modeling in terms of what the standard is asking. So we had to make adjustments. So we did modeling computer simulation on genetic variation. We looked at that and that collected data, so that worked. We looked at fair testing, so we did SSM basis fair testing rates of reaction, and also classifying organisms. We took students to a field trip and collected some species out there in the St. Dunes, and we did some classification experiment there. So that we looked at those 3, and then we're looking at doing another fair test to finish off the year, because yes, it was challenging for us to get our head around what others look like. We thought that, okay, we'll be in the pilot program next year and we'll get our head around the others next year. Let's master this 3, 4 this year, and going forward next year, we'll look at the others as well. So fair testing, easy, nice and easy, because we've done it so many times. Modeling was an interesting experience, but it came out good because the kids started to get it, and we got it while teaching it. So that came all right as well, and classification was pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's what we've done so far.
Oh, thanks.
Something that I sort of realized as the year went on, I might be a bit slow, but they're not so much standalone. They're not independent. The 5 or 6 different investigations. So you could actually do an investigation that can have fair testing and elements of observing and identifying. So you could do one investigation and actually meet the different components, which as long as the kids identify those. The real challenge, or the other challenge for investigation is it's a portfolio of work. So getting kids to understand that. We don't do that in science. We don't do portfolios. Well, we don't. So, you know, you do an investigation in term 1 and then another one in term 2 and then another one in term 3. And then they sit down in term 4 and evaluate their work. And your average year 11 kid, can they necessarily recall what they did in term 1? So that's going to be interesting, how well kids do that final part, which is required for excellence, where they have to evaluate their the different models, so the different investigations.
It's been fun, but I think we need to. We've had a lot of help with from Alan at NZQA. He's been helpful in actually looking at some of our work for us and guiding us, which has been really good. But the portfolio basis of the investigations, I think, will come together, and I also think they'll be actually a lot better once everybody understands it and we can incorporate it into our year 9 and 10 courses, because we haven't taught these kids that. But when we bring it back into year 9 and 10, it's going to be a piece of cake. It's going to be wonderful.
Agree.
Socio-scientific issue question. What context did you use for the chemistry and the physics topics?
So for chem, we looked at climate change. We did carbon chemistry content learning, but that one was almost like a formative. So we do a lot of socio-scientific issues in our junior school, but we don't look at it the way the standard does, which is you've got to look at different viewpoints, you've got to develop your own opinion, and you've got to link the science ideas and justify it. So we use term 1 as a bit of a learning opportunity around those merit excellence ideas before they did their actual in term 2, which was around diabetes in our community.
I think once again, it's one of those ones where you'll develop it in the junior school before you get to the year level 1, but with our kids we haven't. But for physics and chemistry was just as easy. It's just that I mean, we did one for power consumption and what sorts of power consumption devices used, and should you be using them all the time? Should you leave them on? Should you turn the lights off? That sort of thing. Yeah. Chemistry is fluoride in the water, you know, pollution, plastics pollution, all those ones.
Yeah. For us, 1080, we use 1080 and also waterways for our socio-scientific issue. But going forward next year, we will name it ocean acidification as well, because we will take students to the field trip to our local beach, and we will look at a little bit of sort of water in our water topic, and then that's where we look at ocean acidification as a socio-scientific issue as well. Yeah.
We want to keep some things back for level 2 and level 3 though, you know.
Yeah. It's always hard. Just talking external assessment now. So a lot of people were quite interested about the literacy in the external. What was the literacy demands like in that external?
The actual literacy level is okay. They do the literacy check. They explain words that perhaps wouldn't be known by a year 11 student, although this time they didn't quite get them all, but that's okay. It was a trial one, and it didn't go quite through all the checks that a normal standard NCEA exam would, but there was a lot of it. However, they have taken our feedback on board about the fact that there was a lot of reading, and apparently things are changing. We don't know what they're changing to, but it's not going to look like what it was this year. So we can't really talk too much about what it was because it's not relevant.
I think we were told that NZQA will be releasing information shortly around changes to how that standard is going to be assessed. And what I took that to mean was that the standard won't change, but the way that it will be assessed is going to change. Yeah.
So would it be fair to say, guys, they didn't quite get it right, but there's a lot of learning to go forward into 2022?
Totally, a load of learning.
I actually liked it.
Yeah.
I liked the assessment.
It was cool. It was really good.
Yeah. I thought the practice one, you know, I complimented them on the literacy. I've got a lot of low literacy kids, non-English speaking background, and I complimented them on their literacy for the practice one, and then the actual one I did not like because of the literacy. You could see that they had made an effort to make it more understandable, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, DNA sequencing, the term DNA sequencing repeated over and over again when that's not even a year 11 concept. So yeah,
I think it was a bit scary, but you know, it didn't go through all the checks and balances that a normal NCEA exam would. So I think that also was a bit of a problem. And they've taken our feedback on board, which has been one of the cool things about this year, is that they've listened to us.
Big picture, guys. If you were going to do this again, you were this time last year, what would you do differently?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the lotto numbers? But Kamal, you can go up first.
Yeah, I'd say plan less because, yeah, we kind of thought we're going to cover a lot. We're going to put this, we're going to use chemistry here, bio here, physics here, without realizing, okay, looking at 4 standards, we didn't know what to expect from the externals. So we have got 2 internals, which is looking at one is throughout the year, which is embedded into all the units, all the units we're going to teach. So yeah, planning wise, I'll plan less and do it well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chandar?
I think the one aspect that we didn't handle well was the juggling of the different standards. So 1.3 is being assessed in June at the time when we had actually started out learning for 1.2. And so making those things quite explicit to the kids that, you know, we no longer doing 1.2 learning, that today we're actually going to look at how science ideas change over time. And so kids understanding, you know, actually, I think we got the kids to understand, but I don't think we managed it as well, that, you know, we're doing an investigation now, which the final assessment for it is going to be sometime in term 4, or you know, we're learning towards 1.3, and the assessment of that is going to be in June. And yeah, so that juggling for me, I think we need to make a little bit more smoother. Yeah.
Maybe, do we have time for one more, Sam?
Oh, there's so many goodies. Sure. How do you envisage changing junior science to have a more seamless transition into these new level 1 way of doing things?
NOS.
Yeah.
NOS.
Nature of science. Yep, absolutely.
Definitely. If you back from these ones back into NOS into year 9 and 10, you're looking at skills, not at content. And you can't learn skills without content, and you've got to keep the focus on the fact that you can't learn them without the content. The content comes naturally and in a more natural way for the kids to learn it. So they don't have to rote learn, which means that you actually get more of those interesting kids on board.
Oh.
I'm
One more.
wondering what's happened to Sam.
The trouble
I thought that was Sam signing off for the night.
No, I'm working between 3 screens, folks, and I needed to get back to the YouTube thing to make sure I had not missed any questions.
I'm sure we will have missed lots of them, but I think we might have to.
Yeah, the last one was just around literacy. How easy was it to adjust the content to suit the diversity of literacy and numeracy across your year 11s? And then I think we'll have to wrap it up.
Wasn't a problem, really.
Yeah. So we didn't have any new numeracy numeracy credits offered in this pilot standards, and that was sort of a minus as well for us, because most of our kids actually relied on those numeracy credits from science. So that was a minus. I forgot to mention that earlier on, but yeah, literacy wasn't a major. It's not, because then, like, if you look at 1.1s, not much writing is required in 1.1s right across. Year 1.2 internal, which is social scientific issue, yes, but we kind of breaking it down into chunks and scaffolding it for our sort of priority learners to make sure they're able to sort of get through the standard, and our high achievers, there's no issues.
And it's digital, so for the special assessment condition kids, it's ideal.
Cool. I think we're there. There's a little bit of banter, Chandar, about you running PLD across the country, but I'll just leave it in the chat.
Thank you very much, Sam, for fielding those. And that's been really useful, guys. Just listening to you, you know, there's ideas running through my head. There's heaps more questions, and it's very uplifting to hear about your journey, the challenges you've faced, and kind of your thought process, how you've overcome obstacles, and what the impact has been for the students and their engagement. I'd just like to acknowledge the immense work that you, Chandar, Kamal, Linda, and your teams have committed to trialing these new standards, as well as your time and willingness to share your experience with us all tonight. I know that many science teachers throughout our community will benefit from your mahi and your passion. Thank you, Sam, for managing the questions. And I'll close by saying, kia kaha tamaki makoro. Thank you all very, very, very much. Have a lovely evening, and I hope we see you again at some stage.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for organising this.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, guys. Ka kite.
Thank you.